Welcome to the documentary about Jacques Derrida. Unfortunately for Jacques, his famous deconstruction and other philosophical and literary findings didn't help him make his way through the world. Instead, he is now homeless. Homeless, sad, alone, a drunk, and the only thing to even help him get by is his booze. Jacques was born July 15th, 1930 in El Bayar, Algeria. The founder of deconstruction and philosopher of metaphysics, Jacques was influenced by the German philosophers Martin Heidegger and Friedrich Nietzsche. He believed deconstruction was a way of criticizing literature, philosophy, art, and politics. His writing was mainly a form of reflecting on his own life, as a sort of autobiography.
Well, it's surely uncontroversial to say that Jacques Derrida was one of the greatest philosophers of the 20th century. His international reputation, it far exceeds that of any other French intellectual of his generation. More than that, his work fundamentally changed the way in which we think about language and philosophy and aesthetics and painting and literature, communication, ethics, politics. Really, his early work criticized the structuralist presumption that language could be described as a static set of rules. He showed how those rules admitted contingency and were dependent on a temporality that could undermine efficacy.
Though Jacques failed his first entrance exam for a prestigious Paris school, he passed on his second attempt and began to study philosophy. During his time there, he also wrote many eulogies. Jacques' writing style was more literary than philosophical, and definitely not traditional in any manner. Jacques later became a director of studies in philosophical institutions at a Paris university that I cannot pronounce for the life of me. It must be noted that Derrida's style of writing not only made him popular, but also showed off an animosity that readers, felt towards him. What I believe Jacques did was take text and expand it, scrutinize it, and ask what borders or limits of the text are. Clearly the meanings of words are, to Jacques, the word's own identity. There are no underlying meanings or secrets. They just mean what they mean. Derrida considers repetition. Text has to repeat the same, but not be identical to have a possibility of something new. Jacques believes in the presence, that you cannot simply understand, but you must be present to live it, to understand it, to experience the moment. If I were to look at myself and say, I'm ridiculously good looking, I'm in the moment. I'm observing myself, reflecting on myself. This gives meaning to my thought because I'm actually present to witness it. The same applies to text. What the text means at the present moment is what the text means, and is not hidden. The second important factor for Jacques is absence. The question lies in whether or not it is possible to imagine absence without presence. If I lose the world, if I lose the understanding of language, am I still in the moment? This comes back to repetition. If I can repeat the moment I have experienced, then it is possible to repeat the memory. But each memory, though repeated, will be different. So, even though I know and understand a memory, when put in a similar situation again, I will remember my past moment, allowing the memory to precede a new memory, but also exceed it, which in turn will already been remembered. This memory is what can bring my thoughts, or anyone's thoughts, to death, which brings thoughts to the beginning, and ultimately creates my thoughts of absence.
One of the definitions of what is called deconstruction would be the effort to take the limitless context into account, to paint the sharpest and broadest. Speaking of broad, let me tell you about my ex-wife, Ernestine, who left me. I digress, you know. I'm sorry. What was that? Sharpest and broadest attention possible to context, and thus to an incessant movement of recontextualization.
Judith Butler, that's who I am actually. I hail from Leeds, England, and I have been known to study philosophy, and I have a doctorate in philosophy and structuralism of the 20th century literature. Yes, I also studied Marxism in my undergrad. He insisted that the act of reading extends from literary texts and films to works of art, into pop culture and political scenarios, and to philosophy itself. This notion of reading insists that our ability to understand relies on our capacity to interpret signs. It also presupposes that signs come to signify in ways that no particular author or speaker can constrain in advance through intention. And this does not mean that the language always confounds our intentions, but only that our intentions do not govern everything we end up meaning by what we say and write.
The vocabulary, on a par with all other vocabularies which seek to resolve our puzzles and claim no special ability to impart literal truth. Indeed, literal truth itself is a fast disintegrating, for on Derrida's view, so-called literal meanings is always a function of the use of which we choose to put all our words. We willingly interrupt the play of language, artificially restrict the sense of certain signs, constrain them to our purpose, and give them to the honorific title of literal truth.
Let's do some rumor control. My name's not Jacques. It's Jack. J-A-C-K, Jack. All-American Jack, not Jacques. I don't know where that Jacques crap came from. I don't know who started that Jacques stuff. My name's Jack.
In a 1998 essay, Typewriter Ribbon, Jacques said, "Let us put in place the premises of our question. Will this be possible for us? Will we one day be able to, in a singular gesture, to join the thinking of the event to the thinking of the machine? Will we be able to think what is called thinking at one and the same time, both what is happening, we call that an event, and the calculable programming of an automatic repetition, we call that a machine? For that, it would be necessary in the future, but there will be no future except on this condition."
I'm a very philosophical man, and to show you, I wrote a poem. Back in the day, I studied philosophy for years. Lost all that when I drank all these beers.
Language is never molded by or forced to reflect the brute features of a non-linguistic world. It proceeds initially as a kind of unconstrained play, and this, in part, is what Derrida understands by writing. It is, we are told, a free play of signs, a game of verbal leaps and bounds in which the aim is never to represent the non-linguistic world, as if were ever possible.
Once I said there was nothing outside the text. Everybody else thought I was saying there's nothing outside the context. I ain't know what I was saying. I was drunk. Still am.